In the early hours before dawn, while most of Ukraine was still asleep, the war began with sound. Missiles tore through the dark sky. Explosions echoed across cities, windows shattered. Phones lit up with messages no one wanted to read. On February 24th, the Russian invasion of Ukraine was no longer a threat or a warning. It was real, and in the first 72 hours, the fate of the entire country balanced on a knife's edge. In Kyiv, the capital, the shock came fast. Air raid sirens screamed into the cold morning. Roads filled with confusion, some people fled. Others froze in place, trying to understand what was happening. The assumption, shared by many around the world, was that Kyiv would fall quickly. Russia believed it. Western intelligence feared it. The Kremlin had planned for a rapid collapse, expecting the Ukrainian government to flee and the state to crumble within days. At the center of this storm was Volodymyr Zelenskyy, a former comedian who had become president only a few years earlier. Russian planners had dismissed him as weak, untested, and likely to run. Instead, within hours, Zelenskyy was confronted with the most dangerous decision of his life. Intelligence reports began arriving almost immediately. Russian special forces were moving toward Kyiv. Assassination teams were already inside the country. Zelenskyy and his inner circle were told that the presidential office was a primary target. Evacuation plans were offered. Western governments urged him to leave, promising safety and support from abroad. The logic was simple. A government in exile could survive even if Kyiv fell. But Zelenskyy refused. Instead of fleeing, he stayed. Not in a hidden bunker far from the city, but in Kyiv itself. He appeared on camera, standing in the streets, calm and defiant, saying words that would echo far beyond Ukraine's borders. "I am here." In that moment, something shifted. A president choosing danger over safety changed the psychology of the war. As missiles continued to strike, Russian forces advanced from multiple directions. One of the most alarming moves came from the north, through Belarus. Russian columns poured southward toward Kyiv, using routes few expected to be so heavily used. It was a shock not just to civilians, but to military planners. The speed of the advance suggested a plan built on confidence, even arrogance. Russia believed resistance would be minimal. At the same time, Russian troops seized the Chernobyl nuclear zone, a move that stunned the world. The capture of a site synonymous with catastrophe sent a clear message: nothing was off limits. Radiation fears spread. The symbolism was chilling. A place once marked by disaster was now a pawn in a new war. But the most critical battle of those first days unfolded just outside Kyiv at Antonov Airport. Russian airborne forces launched a daring assault, aiming to seize the airport and use it as a bridge for rapid reinforcements. If successful, it would have allowed Russian troops to fly directly into Kyiv's outskirts, potentially ending the war before it truly began. Ukrainian forces understood the stakes immediately. The fighting at Antonov Airport was brutal and chaotic. Russian paratroopers landed under fire. Ukrainian defenders responded with everything they had. Artillery rained down. The airfield changed hands more than once. Smoke filled the sky. For hours, it was unclear who would prevail. But by the end of the day, Ukrainian forces had retaken control. The runway was damaged. Russian aircraft could not land safely. The fast victory Moscow had planned was slipping away. Inside Kyiv, the atmosphere was tense but determined. Government officials slept in offices. Advisors worked through exhaustion. Zelenskyy met with his team under constant threat, aware that any moment could be his last. Yet instead of panic, a strange calm settled in. Decisions were made quickly. Orders went out. Communication remained steady. The Russian expectation had been fear and collapse. What they encountered instead was resistance and unity. Ukrainian soldiers fought fiercely, often outnumbered and under-equipped, but driven by something Russia had underestimated: belief. Civilians volunteered. They built barricades. They prepared Molotov cocktails. They shared intelligence through phones and messages. The line between military and civilian blurred, not in chaos, but in collective defense. Meanwhile, Russian troops began to encounter problems, logistics faltered. Vehicles ran out of fuel, columns stalled. Soldiers, many of whom had been told they were on a training exercise, suddenly realized they were in a full-scale invasion. Morale wavered, the confidence of a quick win evaporated as resistance stiffened. By the third day, it was becoming clear that the plan had failed. Kyiv was still standing. The government was still in place. The president was still alive. What was supposed to be a decapitation strike had turned into a grinding fight. The world watched in disbelief as Ukraine, expected to fall in days, refused to break. Zelensky's decision to stay became more than symbolic. It became strategic. His presence anchored the state. It sent a message to soldiers and civilians alike: this fight mattered. And it sent a message to the world that Ukraine was not asking to be saved. It was asking to be supported while it defended itself. In Moscow, the realization began to sink in: this was not going to plan. The invasion had triggered not submission, but resistance. Not division, but unity. Not silence, but global outrage. Those first 72 hours reshaped everything. They exposed a profound miscalculation by the Kremlin. Russia had expected a weak state and found a nation willing to fight. It had expected confusion and found clarity. It had expected fear and found defiance. The balance of power shifted not because Ukraine had more weapons, but because it had something harder to defeat: resolve. Kyiv did not fall, and because it did not fall, the war became something far larger than a regional conflict. It became a defining moment for global politics, for alliances, and for the idea that even in the face of overwhelming force, leadership and unity can change the course of history. Those first 72 hours did not end the war, but they decided its meaning.